Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Life in Comedy. I'm your host, Will Beckton. This is a show about comedy and people who are never not funny. My guest today is Jimmy Pardo. I met Jimmy while working at Conan, where he was the warm-up comic, as well as the host of the Pardo Patrol, which was a web series that I also worked on. Jimmy is a veteran stand-up who came up in Chicago, and the host of Never Not Funny, which is one of the longest-running and most revered comedy podcasts around. It was great catching up with Pardo. Here's that interview. All right, I'm here with Jimmy Pardo.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this.
That's it? That's the big time showbiz intro?
I mean, there'll be another intro.
Oh, okay.
There'll be some biographical
little build-up
information and some, respect
Okay.
imbued to you.
So far, I feel very disrespected.
I'm not a warm-up guy.
Neither am I. I never was. I'm thrilled to be here. Whenever you and I get to interact, it's always a joy.
Yeah, it's been kind of like a long, fun plot trajectory because I don't know. Well, okay, we'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
As far as stand-up goes, did you grow up in Chicago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was born in Chicago, then, moved to the suburbs as time went on.
Yeah. Did you start stand-up in Chicago?
I did.
Oh, nice.
In the mid-'80s, I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Pasadena, California for the theater.
Yeah.
And to be a thespian.
Oh, my gosh.
And I did a year there, and admittedly, because I had taken a couple of years off from high school before I went there, and I kind of felt like I was a man in classes with kids. And I kind of didn't take it as seriously as I should have. I kind of felt like I'd done Second City in Chicago, and I found
always
that
wondered about that. Yeah.
That was really helpful and really let you be creative. And then to go there and be, scripted and an actor. And I should have taken it more seriously in retrospect. Here we are 40 years later. But at the end of that year, when they're giving you kind of the review and are they going to have you come back for a second year, to the janitor, everybody was like, you should do stand-up.
Yeah.
Like the head of the place, which I maybe interacted with once, goes, you're the funniest guy to ever come through these doors. Use that talent.
Yeah.
Go and do stand-up,
Wow.
Maybe even Second City. Go do that.
Yeah.
That will be your path into show business and stardom.
Yeah.
His words, not mine,
Yeah.
certainly.
Kind of be yourself. You do
Yes.
you, not, as opposed to trying to act like other people. It's like, do that.
Yeah.
Get on stage
utilize
and be you.
your quick wit.
Yeah.
Be the guy that everybody loves being around.
Yeah.
Unless they're in a scene with you. I actually wasn't that bad. I'm busting my own balls, but it was great advice.
Yeah.
That was kind of the first push to then, okay, I'm going to go back to Chicago and start stand-up there. The comedy boom of the 80s was happening.
Yeah. I don't really know anything about the Chicago stand-up scene. I know a lot about, I mean, not a lot, but I know a bit about Improv Olympic, Second City and stuff like that, but I know nothing about the Chicago stand-up scene.
It was two different worlds. The Chicago scene had really a lot of great stand-up, some that just stayed there and got to be big fish in a small sea sort of thing, even though Chicago's huge. Some really talented people. So when I moved back, I needed a day job, and I was managing a record store, which I did for years before I moved to Pasadena. Then after Pasadena, then I ended up working for MCA Records.
Oh, cool.
But while I was working at the Oranges Records and Tapes in Naperville, a customer would come in every Saturday morning by the name of Bob Odenkirk.
Oh, wow.
And Bob would come in, and to me, he was just a guy. He lived in the city, and his parents lived in Naperville, and every Saturday he would go to visit his parents. And he would come in just to browse the record store, probably killing time to not spend as much time with his parents, is my guess. And we would chit-chat with each other and make each other laugh. He would go, all right, Bob, we'll see you again. And then at one point he said to me, you ever do stand-up? And I was like, no, but you know what? I haven't yet, but I did the academy. They told me I should, so on and so forth. And he said, well, you're one of the funniest guys. You got to do stand-up. There's a show tonight right down the street that my roommate books. Why don't you come?
Wow.
I was like, all right, I'll go. So I went to see Bob Odenkirk on this lineup, and just coincidentally on the lineup was a guy named Bill Leff, who I just coincidentally went to high school with.
Oh, weird.
He was 2 years older than me, but is in the top 3 funniest people I've ever met in my entire life. And
you knew that from high, knew he was funny from those days.
And we clicked then. I was friends with his younger brother, but I really clicked with Bill.
Mm-hmm.
And we would make each other laugh. We had the same kind of references and so on. And so he's on the lineup, and I walk in, and his first thing he said to me was, are you on the show? And I'm like, no, I came to watch. Bob Odenkirk invited me. And everybody's like, Odenkirk invited you? Odenkirk's a standoffish, aloof weirdo. What?
He likes you?
Yeah, like he has a friend? And I said, yeah, he invited me to come watch because he too thinks I should do this. And Bill Leff said, you're the funniest guy I've ever met. You should be doing stand-up.
Wow.
And then the next weekend, I started doing stand-up.
Nice.
So the Bob Odenkirk, Bill Leff, in addition to the, people I worked with and the academy, though, telling me to do it, I just started hitting all the open mics.
That's so cool. Like, you hear about people like, I was given a camera by Andy Warhol or something that. That's a good auspicious for Odenkirk to be the kind of guy to set you on your way.
I think he was at the time he was at an improv group. In addition to doing stand-up, he was in an improv group called Duck Logic. And I forget who else was in that group.
So he wasn't in that review with Pasquazi and Farley yet at Second City. Had he already done that?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I can't. I'll tell you what, I won't.
Okay, don't answer it. There's a picture of like him, Odenkirk, and Farley next to each other. And I think Tim Meadows was in that.
Sure.
It was like Brian Stack always used to say like the funniest thing he'd ever seen in his life was the stage version of the motivational speaker, the van down by the river thing, which Odenkirk wrote or whatever,
right.
That's so cool.
And to your question about the Second City world, there was a weird rivalry of the stand-up world had their own world and the sketch/improvisers had their own world.
I assumed that, yeah.
And we'd end up going to the same bars because Second City was right near Zany's, a place called Burton Place. We'd all go in there, and in the bar, we'd all get along, but then it would be like, oh, well, I'm going to go back to Second City. I'm going to go back to stand-up. And then all of a sudden, I'm back to hating you.
That's so funny.
Not really, but you know what I mean? Like some
Well, I think there was rivalries even between improv theaters.
I think you're right, yeah. So I'm very lucky. I started in the boom, the late 80s, where they needed bodies. There were so many comedy clubs, one-nighters, bars doing comedy night.
So you're just doing spots around kind of thing? Like you try to hit a couple places?
Yeah, I would do open mics pretty much every night.
Wow.
And I guess because I was quick on my feet and I had stage presence, I started getting booked way too soon.
Yeah.
Way too soon. Like I should not have been getting booked.
To host or to like...
to host or to be the first guy. Like if it was a 4-man show, I would be the guy on right after the host.
Okay.
And flail and suck and not be good.
Yeah. Get your bombing under your belt.
Oh, did I get a lot of it under my belt? Well, it was a lot of bombing and a lot of people telling me when you get as funny on stage as you are off stage, it's going to click.
Yeah.
And even though I'm bombing, I'm still like, yeah, but I'm doing this. I don't know what you're talking about. I think
it's weird. It's a weird thing to be elusive. It can be elusive, right? But it's like, why? Like, why is it elusive to try to be yourself?
Exactly. And then when I finally became myself on stage, when I finally took that note, it was my friend Paul Gilmartin who finally said it in the right way. And I cannot tell you even what words he used, but he said something. The light bulb went off. Yeah. And I threw my act away. And for months, just improvised on stage.
Wow.
Finding an act, telling stories, doing whatever I had to do, crowd work, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is way too popular these days. And my skill of crowd work just seems to be lost in a sea of people trying to do crowd work. But
yeah, it's become a crutch, right?
It's a crutch. And I think, it's very lazy and it's not being done well. There are people that do it well.
Yeah.
Laurie Kilmartin does it wonderfully.
Todd Barry.
Yeah. Me. I hate to throw myself in it, but others will.
Yeah. Sweeney. I heard Todd Barry say Sweeney was the best he'd ever seen at crowd work.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, brilliantly funny. So, I got my legs under me. I quit my day job. My first open mic was October of 88. I quit my day job in July of 89.
Wow.
Way too soon.
Yeah.
My boss gave me an ultimatum. He basically said, you got to figure out what you're going to do here. I was working for MCA Records.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't doing my job. That's the truth. I wasn't.
Yeah.
In the office every day, I was calling comedy bookers and comedians and not my accounts. I wasn't calling the record stores saying, you need more Fine Young Cannibals? I wasn't doing that. And so he was right to give me the ultimatum.
Yeah. Did you ever cross paths with Albini in Chicago?
Oh, Steve Albini?
Yeah.
My friend Daver did, but I never knew him. I knew his girlfriend.
Oh, interesting.
Because she worked at the funny firm in Chicago, coincidentally.
Yeah, it's an interesting music town. Like, it's a sneaky big music town, I think.
I'm more of a classic rock guy.
Yeah.
So, like, me crossing paths with Steve Albini would have been, I would have just been there because I know my friend Dave.
Gotcha.
And this is Steve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
that
sort of thing.
Yeah. You're not like going to shellac shows or whatever.
I'm not going to Shuba's. I'm not going to see Wilco, who were the big underground band at the time before they broke big.
Yeah.
I'm a Styx REO Journey Chicago guy.
Chicago. Yeah.
That's who I am.
Look no further.
Yeah.
So because you were in New York, right? Like
Never.
That's so weird. Did you come through New York or did you go directly from Chicago to LA?
Chicago. So I lived here in the 80s.
Yeah.
Back to Chicago, then moved back to LA in 95.
Oh, okay.
Fun Jimmy Pardo fact.
Yeah.
I've only done a show in New York with a camera on me.
Okay.
I've never gone to New York just to do stand-up.
Ever.
I've only ever been there you're going to shoot your Comedy Central special. You're doing Premium Blend. You're doing.
Okay.
You
never just did Comedy Cellar.
Nope.
Wow. That's so interesting.
I never did New York. There was something about it that just, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a little intimidated by it, quite frankly.
Well, it seems like a commitment to penetrate that scene. You'd probably,
Yes.
probably wouldn't automatically be like, come
Here
on
it is.
in.
Right.
Yeah.
It just seemed so daunting.
Yeah.
Moving here and doing the road just seemed like.
So the road, you did like
a lot.
Go around the country. Gotcha.
Yeah. When I lived in Chicago, I lived with my mom and stepdad. They were nice enough to let me live there. I was really just there on Monday nights to do laundry, then back in my car, out doing horrible gigs. Some good gigs from time to time, but a lot of horrible gigs.
Yeah.
Thinking I'm making a living. Probably not really, just paying bill money.
Yeah.
But doing stand-up.
Yeah. Were you a part of the Largo world?
I was. I came in. It was well established.
So was it at the original
on
location?
Fairfax? Yeah, the original.
Yeah. Was Paul F. Tompkins the early part of that world? Yeah.
Again, Bob Odenkirk, David Cross, Sarah Silverman, Mary Lynn Rajskub, Patton, Blanket Patch, Paul F. Tompkins, Greg Behrendt, and obviously some other folks.
Yeah, those are all killers.
Laura Milligan.
Wow.
I was an improv guy. Another nice thing, I ended up opening for Paul Reiser and Robert Klein and some other folks early in my career, and they all said, "Has Bud seen you yet?" Bud Friedman.
Yeah.
Has Bud seen you? Like, no, Bud hasn't seen me. And at the time, late 80s, early 90s, had power.
Yeah.
If Bud Friedman called up.
It's like Mitzi and Bud, it was like that level.
Yeah, he was a kingmaker.
Yeah.
So if he called, I forget his last name, Jim, somebody at the Tonight Show and said, "I got Jimmy Pardo here, come and see him." If Bud Friedman made that call, the guy would come.
Yeah.
Or if he called CBS and said, "You got to see this new kid." And so when they'd say, "If Bud's going to see you, it's going to take off." Well, sure enough, I did a spot. Bud saw me. And I got spots at the Improv every night.
Wow.
And so I was an improv guy who then Greg Behrendt saw me and said, "You got to come to Largo. You've got Largo sensibilities."
Yeah.
And again, I was a little intimidated because I didn't consider myself really as an alternative comic. I wasn't doing rolled up sport coat Seinfeld comedy.
No.
But I didn't think I was Janine Garofalo holding my notes comedy either. You know what I mean?
No. That's interesting. Yeah.
And so when Greg said that, and then my manager Bruce set it up, and I went to Largo one night, and I had, honestly, it sounds like I'm bragging a lot. I'm not. I bombed and sucked a lot. The audience should know that.
Yeah.
This night at Largo, I had probably one of my top 10 sets of all time.
Wow.
Like, even on stage, like, this is fucking, for me, this is special.
Yeah. Oh, so even in the moment, you're like, whoa,
this is.
Yeah.
And I remember the one takeaway was there was a music stand on stage because, people would put their notes there.
Yeah.
And I went, if I had sheet music, I'd put it there. And for some reason, the unnecessary aside.
Yeah.
Why was it said? It was so on brand for what Largo was doing.
Yeah.
Like the roof just exploded at that stupid line.
And it also ties in music. I think Largo mixes the music and stand-up or comedy worlds probably at the highest level I can think
I 100% agree. And that's certainly, Amy Mann and Michael Penn and Stan Ridgway and Colin Hay and Andy Preboy. The alt music scene and the alt comedy scene.
Yeah.
And we all kind of, for at least when it was Largo was on Fairfax, we all kind of meshed.
Yeah.
So that one set at Largo then made me a Largo regular. Lisa Langame was booking it.
That's so crazy.
And it was really
like
great.
How the switch kind of goes, like all of a sudden you're like, okay, I guess I'm a Largo person now.
Okay. I guess I'm friends with Paul F. Tompkins now. And it was really cool. I loved, it was me and Andy Kindler and Todd Glass who kind of straddled both the Improv and Largo.
Is really hard to pin down. Talk about a guy that's like, it's just really hard to categorize.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's doing comedy.
Yeah.
By the way, top 5 funniest guys I've ever met. Sincerely. But I don't think he knows what he's doing on stage. And I mean that complimentary. Like, he is so brilliant, as is Andy Kindler. That whole scene is brilliant.
Yeah.
And
there's an unpredictability about it.
Yes.
There's a little bit of an edge of the seat kind of thing.
Yeah. And you thought when the crowds would go to Largo, they thought they were seeing something special.
Yeah.
And then it flipped a little bit. The hipsters started coming.
Yeah.
And then it started getting write-ups in the paper. And then all of a sudden, the crowd started coming, hoping that Sarah Silverman would show up. And if Sarah wasn't on the show, they would just sit there quietly waiting.
Yeah.
Instead of laughing and enjoying Blaine Capatch being brilliant.
Oh my God, he's so funny.
It's like he's trying to work to get what was a great crowd.
Yeah.
And then Largo moved and, so on and so forth. But it's still, Flanagan has been a great supporter. I'm grateful to have met him and to have been part of that scene. It was really a special moment.
That's one of the special scenes, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the reason we know each other is Conan.
Yes.
You were the warm-up comedian at Conan. Were you around that world prior to the TBS version of the show?
Yeah, I was at the Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
I started day one there.
So you're there for the whole 7 months.
I was there for the full 7 months. And then the 9 months we were not there.
Yes.
After Jay Leno insisted he wanted his job back and somebody thought that was a good idea. Yeah, that was a neat call. I'd hosted some TV shows, AMC and Game Show Network and stuff. And I did warm up twice for Craig Kilborn's talk show.
Okay.
And I was not good at it.
Interesting.
I mean, horribly bad. Like,
really?
Just awful. Just awful.
Huh.
Not good. But Craig thought I was funny.
Yeah.
But then it was like, I'm not enjoying doing this and it's not fun. I'm going to stop doing this.
Yeah.
I was kind of just a fill-in guy. I maybe did it 4 times total.
It's a really interesting gig, right?
That particular warm-up gig was you warm up the audience for like a half hour and then you do commercial breaks for like 10 minutes for every commercial break. And it's like, this is a slog. And if they don't like you to begin with, when you're doing the 5th commercial break, they hate you. And they also want to leave. Why are they there for 2.5 hours for a 45-minute taping? So the audiences would get restless and they didn't understand it. And so it wasn't fun for me. So I was at the ArcLight movie theater one day and I got a call from my manager, Bruce, saying, hey, I just got a call from the Tonight Show, JP Buck over at the Tonight Show. They want to meet with you to be the warm-up for the Tonight Show with Conan O'Brien. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that.
What do you mean, nah?
I hated it.
Oh, because of the early... okay, gotcha. The Tonight Show didn't outweigh the...
Within seconds. Within seconds. I'm like, I got to take that meeting. And just weirdly, and I don't believe in manifesting. I don't believe in crystals and all that horseshit.
The secret.
I don't. That said, the day before he called me, I had a dream that I got hired to work at the Tonight Show.
Okay.
Because I always felt like if I ever met Conan O'Brien, we'd click.
Yeah.
And he would want me to work for him. I always felt that way. From the day he started at, late night.
Yeah.
When he started
and he
that
and
show.
Odenkirk are,
great
have a
friends.
history. Yeah.
So I get that call and I go to the meeting and I met first with Sweeney and Allison Flurl was in there as well.
Yep. Mike Sweeney and Flurl was, I think, the writer's assistant at that.
She was the writer's assistant. And so I walk in and Sweeney had just broken his arm doing something for the cold open for the first Tonight Show or something. He was running backward, filming Conan running across Wrigley Field, I think.
Oh, God.
And then I think Sweeney tripped and then broke his arm. I don't remember where it happened, but he broke his arm.
The curse of Wrigley.
Yeah. If it was Wrigley, it was somewhere.
Yeah.
So he comes in and I never met Mike Sweeney. I really had never met anybody. I met.
That's so weird. I just assumed that all stand-ups know each other.
So I didn't know any of these guys. So there was a beanbag chair and Sweeney sits in the beanbag chair and the beanbag chair doesn't support him and he kind of rolls off the beanbag chair and he's just laying on the ground with his broken arm.
Oh, God.
And he continued doing the interview from that position. And
That's
then
amazing.
I went, I got to take this job.
Yeah. I love Sweeney. I just love that guy.
Amazingly great guy. And amazingly funny and talented.
Yeah.
So in my brain, I said, I've got to take this job. This is going to be great fun. My mouth went, thank you, but I'm not going to take it. And he's like, what? And he goes, why don't you go down and meet Jeff Ross?
Is he still sort of half on the beanbag?
We're not. No, at this point, he's getting up because he doesn't understand who would say no to this great opportunity. 5 nights a week making NBC money.
Yeah.
Tonight Show money.
Network money. Yeah.
And Dummy is saying no. And he goes, let's go meet Jeff Ross. And so I go down to meet Jeff Ross. So I didn't know who he was. I'd seen him on television on the, whenever they would shoot to him at the late night.
Yeah.
And, Jeff Ross, hey, Jimmy Pardo, nice to meet you. I hear you don't want the job. It's your job if you want it. So the story was they were looking for a warm-up guy to take over as a full-time position. They were having Brian McCann do it in New York.
But he's also like a writer. He's
performer,
doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So when they made the move from late night to the Tonight Show, they said, let's get a guy that's all he does.
Yeah.
And Conan said, but I don't want one of those horseshit warm-up guys. I want a guy. And Andy Richter, who I knew a little bit, not a lot.
I was wondering this, yeah.
Mike Sweeney told me this. Andy said, the guy with the same sensibilities as this show, who could do anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour off the top of his head, is Jimmy Pardo. That's who we should get.
Yes.
And then the next day, I was called into the office.
Wow. Andy's influence on that show, both like vibe and personnel, is enormous.
Yeah.
Like so many writers were Andy people.
Because he's out in the field.
Yeah.
He's out doing the battles.
He's doing
the sketch
monologues.
Show. Exactly. And he's meeting these amazingly talented writers and performers like McCann and Brian Stack and Todd Levin and Josh Comers and so on and so forth. So, all right. So Jeff Ross is like, I hear you don't want it. And I said, you know what? I did it for Kilborn, and it just, I wasn't the right fit. This is a different thing. And I go, I don't like doing commercials. We don't do commercials. He goes, you're done. You'll do 8 minutes up front, then you're done. Like, what the shit? What 8 minutes? That seems like, okay. And I go, yeah, I'm just not sure. And he picks up the phone. He goes, he doesn't want it. The kid doesn't want it. And then he hangs up, and then Conan came in. I never met Conan.
So it wasn't a stunt phone call.
Conan
was actually on the
Yeah, Conan's like, maybe he got his glass to the wall in the other room. In the room at the time was Steve Hollander, the stage manager.
Yeah. He's a day one guy.
Day one. He's been there forever.
Yeah.
And a great guy.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Kiley.
Yep.
A brilliant writer.
Yep.
Who I knew from stand-up. And so it's Kiley, now Mike Sweeney and I, when we join. Jeff Ross picks up the phone. He doesn't want the job. Conan comes walking in. There's no seats. And so Conan's like looking around for a seat, and he just goes, fuck it. And he sits down, crisscross applesauce.
Yeah.
And he's still taller than me in a chair.
So this is the second person that sat on the floor in like 10 minutes.
Exactly. And to me, it's Conan O'Brien.
Yeah.
Shouldn't somebody get up and give him their chair? Like,
yeah.
And the fact that he sat on the floor.
That's almost like a parable kind of element or something. You know what I mean? Like,
I do.
You know, like in the Bible, there's like, he washed his feet or something, you know, like a signifier of humility or something.
That's how I saw it. And I always say that, I mean, I've had a lot of jobs. I've had jobs where I've hosted my own television show. I'm the star.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Pardo's on set sort of thing.
Yeah. Number one on the call sheet thing. Yeah.
Never treated better than when I worked at Conan.
Wow.
And I think day one of him sitting on the floor that way is a reason for that. It trickles from the top.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, Conan's a great guy. In addition to being brilliantly funny, he's a great guy who at least treated me very nicely. And everybody else that I was around seemed like nice people.
Well, I think a really good indicator, because I started at the beginning of the TBS show, I could tell pretty quickly. I was like, oh man, these people have been here for a long time, you know?
They all moved from New York.
Yeah.
They packed up their homes and moved here thinking they're going to be at the Tonight Show. I mean, let's be honest, forever?
Yeah.
Like when I got hired there, my friend said to me, dude, this is the Tonight Show. You're going to have a job for the rest of your life.
It's the finish line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that day, Conan said, why don't you just give it a try? If you don't like it, quit.
Yeah.
How do you turn that down?
Yeah.
And then I started day one at the Tonight Show.
Wow.
Doing warm up. I was not good at the job. I finally found my footing right around the time that we all got fired. Again, because Jay Leno wanted his job back. And I was there, by the way, I was there the day that Jeff Zucker walked in. I was in the hallway while the show was being taped, and Jeff Zucker came in. Remember, there was all the brouhaha of Conan's out, Jay's in, all that horse shit.
Yes.
And Jeff Zucker lying, saying, it's not true, it's not true, it's not true. And when it was clearly true. And he's just garbage, Jeff Zucker. So he walks in and he's shaking everybody's hands and he's glad-handing people. You know, he remembers people's names. So like I met him 6-7 months earlier.
Yeah.
Hey, there he is, Jimmy. How you doing, man? And he's just this suit.
Yeah.
And it's clear that he's just full of shit.
Yeah.
It was at that moment that I went, oh, this is happening.
Oh, God.
This is happening. And then they had the meeting. And then the next day, Conan had a meeting with the entire crew. And then basically saying, all right, there's some rumors, blah, blah, blah. And then 2 days later.
Well, didn't TMZ?
Yeah, they broke it.
Yeah.
It was just so bizarre. The whole thing was weird. Then we went away. And then it was time for TBS. Tracy King calls me up and said,
Tracy's amazing.
They want you back.
Another day one person. Yep.
Been there forever.
Yeah.
And a nice person, a great person. You know, she's like, they want you back. Why don't you come and get your pass? And you can hang out for the month before we even go on air. Just, be part of the team and hang out over here and say hello to folks. And
it was good vibes,
dude,
at the lead up to that TBS show for sure.
He was a folk hero because he got pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay Leno was the villain.
Yep.
And Conan's the hero.
Yep.
And we're working for the hero.
Yep.
And the audience vibes were great. And the show was great. And I thought it was fun at the Tonight Show. The energy was so different at TBS. It was like, oh, Conan wasn't having fun over here.
Yes.
People were stressed out. They were getting notes from NBC. They were on his ass.
Yeah.
We didn't know that until that, late book came out.
You kind of don't know what you're being sheltered from.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially when you're doing 8 minutes. You're showing up and
yeah.
So then, day one at the TBS and, same deal, go out and do 8 minutes. And then one day I was there early and Steve Hollander, the stage manager, goes, why don't you just go out early? And it was like 15 minutes at this point. I go, yeah, I'll do that. Let's go out. And so then 15 minutes turned to 20 minutes, and then it turned into 22 minutes. So I would do 22 minutes at the top, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And my manager at the time, TJ, Bruce and TJ were in my management. TJ was like, Jim, as soon as they see you, you're not just going to do warm-up. You're going to do remotes. You're going to do, and sure enough, I started doing remotes. I started being a guest on the show.
Yep.
And so I went from just being this guy hey, here's your exits and be careful on your way out, to being part of this comedy family.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I loved every second I was there. I got to meet you doing my web series, The Pardo Patrol, which was another example of let's give Pardo something to do.
That was so much fun. So you basically, I mean, we would tell people, obviously, but the conceit was you would barge in to a dressing room and they would kind of be surprised and be like, and then you'd kind of like buttonhole them.
Yeah.
But the first one was Ken Jeong.
Ken Jeong was the first one. Exactly.
And then pretty early on, Tom Hanks like asked to be on
Dude,
it.
that was the day that happened. We had done a bunch of them. And the Ken Jeong one was really, I didn't know I thought it was just going to be interviews. And I've known Ken a long time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so Ken and I were busting each other's balls. And I may have been doing some what would now be considered offensive jokes.
Yeah.
About gongs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Ken said one thing to me that I found to be jokingly over the line. How dare you say that to me?
Yeah.
And I was like, after I've been doing Don Rickles on him for 7 minutes, and then he says one thing to me, and I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Interview's over, and I storm out.
Yeah.
I decided that's how they're all going to end.
You can dish it, but you can't take it.
And they're wrong. They have no right to treat me that way.
Yeah.
And so, Martin Short I did one with.
There was amazing. Dude. I mean, like the first time I was aware of Timothy Oliphant is when we went into that room to do it.
And we shot Nerf guns at each other.
And I was like, who is this guy?
Right.
And then I was like, oh, this guy's fucking
this guy's a star.
One of the most charismatic people I've ever been around.
And then that's who this dude is.
Yeah.
And I love Justified and Deadwood, so I was excited about that one because I knew how great of an actor he was.
Yeah.
So to your thing about Tom Hanks, we had done a bunch of them, and they would, depending on who was producing the segments, they would mention it to Martin Short or Daryl Hall.
Yeah.
They would ask the talent, do you want to do this thing with Jimmy Pardo? And some would say no, and some would say yes. Most times they would never ask the A guest.
Yeah.
Because they would just figure.
Afraid of getting a no.
Why bother Tom Hanks?
Why
He's going to say no.
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. So nobody asks Tom Hanks because it's Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a warm up and I look over to the side and there's Aaron Blair't. And Blaze off to the side of the stage. I'm like, what's he doing? What are you looking at?
Yeah.
Let me do my thing.
Quit staring at me.
Quit staring at me. And it was
and why the sudden interest from Blaze?
Exactly. And he does have like a rabbit energy. Like he's
a high RPM.
Yes. Even more so than me. And that's a lot.
And you're like a hummingbird.
I am. I agreed. So he's there and I'm like, well, I still have my job to do here. What do you want?
Yeah.
So I'm done. I walk over and he goes, Hanks wants to do a Pardo Patrol. I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, Hanks said, hey, can I do one of those things with that guy who does the web series? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So immediately, we put together something for me to, go in and talk with Tom Hanks about.
Yeah.
And I get to now improvise with Tom Hanks.
And he totally got it. Like he was so fun. Like when you came in, like he looked so like dismissive of you. I mean, he really took it seriously.
He got it. And he just starts yelling at me. You get out of here. He yelled at me about being short and made fun of my height, which I was not offended by because, again, the premise was I was just shitting on his movies.
Yeah.
And then he calls me short and I get mad.
Oh, my God.
Then we're done and he hugs me and he's like, Jimmy, that was so much fun. Thank you for... And it's like, Tom Hanks is thanking me?
Those were really fun. And one of the more interesting ones for me, just because it was so random, when we did one with John Hamm, and I was like, oh my God, John Hamm. And you're like, oh, he used to sleep on my couch?
No. I used to play, I played poker with John.
Oh, played poker with him.
Yeah.
I think somebody exaggerated that because I would have gone my whole life thinking that.
Oh, no, my good Lord.
Yeah. Oh my God, who told me this?
That he slept on my couch?
Somebody said that he crashed on your couch when he first met. And so I was like, did they know each other from the Midwest? I like all of this time.
Oh my gosh.
I thought you guys were old buddies.
We're friends.
Okay.
It was Alex Reed's poker game. He was a brilliant writer in town. Scott Aukerman, a guy named John Schroeder, who's a producer on Bob's Burgers, myself, and one other guy. We'd play poker. Oh, I guess the other guy would be John Hamm.
Yeah.
We would call John Hamm Handsome John, and then Tall John, who's John Schroeder, who's like literally 7 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
We'd call him Tall John. So it was Handsome John and Tall John.
Nice.
And I didn't remember that. And then years later, I was hosting the Match Game live, the game show Match Game. We would do it at the UCB every month until we got a cease and desist from Fremantle. But Scott Aukerman and I produced that. And,
cool.
And he said, Mad Men had just started. And Mad Men was, critically acclaimed. And people, they quote unquote, hip people were watching it. I was like, man, this show is great. And this guy's great. And Aukerman says to me, hey, do you think we should book Hanny for the next match game? I'm like, we know him? He goes,
That's Handsome John.
that's Handsome John. I go, you got to be kidding. I didn't put two and two together.
Oh, my God.
In interviews, I don't know if he still does, but in the past, John would say, Jimmy Pardo, Scott Aukerman, and Tina Fey are the reason that people know I'm funny.
Yeah.
They let me show off the comedy side of me.
Two things I wanted to make sure we covered. One of which is we did, or I didn't think this was Blay and I, but we shot a Comedy Store showcase. This was back when we did showcases of stand-ups. So JP Buck, I talked about earlier, he booked the stand-ups, and they used to do showcases at comedy clubs where people would basically, like the stand-ups who wanted to be on the show or who they were looking at, would do their like 5-ish minutes like to a Comedy Store crowd.
Yeah.
And then they would kind of use that as the basis for who they were
Do I want that
like
person
put on the show. But it was pretty insane because these are the people that I just remember off the top of my head.
And if I'm not mistaken, I was hosting this.
Yes, you were hosting
I would always
it.
host these things because I wasn't going to do stand-up on television.
Yeah, you'd be like in a cardigan introducing people and telling jokes.
So who was on?
Chelsea Peretti.
Correct.
Kyle Kinane.
Correct.
Al Madrigal.
Yes.
Sean Patton.
Yes.
I mean, just the fact that like that group of people at one point in time were just kind of babies, like showbiz wise, or at least TV wise. I mean, they were seasoned stand-ups, but
another example is Pete Holmes. When I was my first time on as a guest on Conan, on panel, when we come back, stand-up comedian Pete Holmes. So like even Pete Holmes was just a stand-up at one point on that show. JP Buck did a great job of curating the comedians for that show. Like like all those people have the right tone for Conan.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain vibes of comedy, and JP Buck did a great job of booking the comics.
And he gave a lot of people their first slot. Yeah. And John Doerr was the first stand-up that performed on the TBS show, and then the first time I ever saw Rory Scovel was when they did that double booking.
Which was hysterical. Yeah.
That's a special skill, like to be able to kind of like nurture. It's almost like, it reminds me of like when you hear about like old school A&R people or whatever, but like to sort of like nurture somebody and kind of like, you got to tell them some uncomfortable things so they'll get better, but you also have, don't want to like totally crush their confidence and all that.
Yeah. JP knows how to do it. He knows how to give notes to comics. The other person over at Conan and before that Tonight Show was Jim Pitt, who would book the music acts.
Yes. One of my favorite people at that show.
Amazing.
For sure.
Great guy. Yeah. And he would book music acts like, I remember one night I said, hey, we got a great lineup. I'll make up names. We've got Tom Hanks, Kevin Nealon, and musical act Imagine Dragons. And literally 2 people applaud Imagine Dragons.
Yeah.
And the next week, they're selling out the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
So Jim Pitt had like this vision of like, he knew these bands that were about to break.
Well, his first ever booking, right?
On which show?
Like at the beginning of Late Night?
I don't.
Radiohead.
Is that right?
Playing Creep. So that's pretty good
Good start. Good start.
I mean, it's not Chicago.
He did book Chicago on the Tonight Show.
That's good.
And Chicago brought a box of T-shirts for everybody to grab a T-shirt.
Oh, that's nice.
The only band ever in the history of that show to bring swag for people.
That seems like a pretty easy thing to do.
I remember when Rowie came to me. Rowie was the music producer.
Yeah. Rowie Hershkovitz is now at Capitol Records.
Capitol Records, right? Yeah. So Rowie came to me and said, hey, by the way, Chicago brought some T-shirts and hats. Go up and grab one. And then Kings of Leon were on the next day. And I was new to this late night game. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, are there Kings of Leon T-shirts up there? And he's like, no, Chicago's a class act.
Yeah.
Nobody else has ever done that. And that was it.
Unprecedented.
And I'm with you.
Yeah.
It seems like an easy thing to do to bring
promotional
30
items.
T-shirts?
Anything.
Right? Yet here's one of the biggest American bands of all time. They bring T-shirts.
Yeah.
Very nice of them.
And then the other thing, obviously, Never Not Funny.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it today, couldn't believe it. 2006.
We started in April 2006. We're about to hit our 19th year. We're in our 19th year.
That's so impressive. That's so crazy.
Yeah, this guy, Matt Belknap.
Who I met him at a kid birthday party.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You guys
really like him. Yeah,
great guy.
Very extremely smart, obviously.
I am the luckiest person alive. I've been so, I don't use the word blessed in the religious way, but I mean it. I've been blessed in that I met Andy Richter, who got me a job with Conan O'Brien, who made my life better. Matt Belknap was a fan who would come to my shows at the UCB.
Because he had a special thing, right? That was his website. Yeah.
Alternative comedy website. I was a liked comedian on that website.
Gotcha.
Because of the UCB and the Largo and the M-Bar scene. And I was doing a monthly show at the UCB called Running Your Trap with Jimmy Pardo, which was basically just a non-televised talk show.
Yeah.
You know, I'd go out and I would do a monologue, do a desk piece, and then I would interview a comedian or whatever would happen.
Yeah.
Matt would come and watch that show, and then he approached me and said, "Do you want to turn that into a podcast?" And again, this in 2005, he probably came to me to say that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what that means, but
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So we had a bunch of meetings about it, and then we sat down at my dining room table in 2006 and started Never Not Funny. You know, I wasn't the first. There was Keith and the Girl on the East Coast, and there was, you know, Jason Nash had one here on the West Coast.
Isn't there an MTV VJ that claims to
Adam
be?
Curry.
Yeah.
He kind of started the podcast, and then Ricky Gervais had it, of course. But I was the number one podcast in the world for a little while. Like it was me and The Onion and Ricky Gervais, and on any given day, one of us would be number one. And then, you know, the comedy explosion happened, and then people like Conan O'Brien have squished me.
You know, and then in between that, Mark Maron.
Yeah, Mark came.
Yeah. When did he start? Was it like
he came? I think in 2008.
Because the first time I heard of his podcast was around 2011.
Okay,
and it was Todd Levin. It was in Conan's office. And he was like, Mark Maron does this really funny podcast called WTF. And he's like, it doesn't matter if you like Mark Maron or not. The interviews are great.
Yeah.
I remember at one point when we were talking about starting, I mean, obviously, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out that Conan's going to be good at hosting a podcast.
100%.
You know?
Right.
But the guy had a fucking TV show.
He's got his own job.
Yeah. Like, so it was hard to convince him to, well, I have to do this extra thing or whatever. But when Adam Sachs came over, that's when people kind of got serious about it. But I remember somebody at Team Coco, who I'll protect the identity of, because this was around 2018 or whatever. But it was like, yeah, we're going to do a podcast with Conan. Isn't that great? And then they were like, what is this, 2010?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, but one of the weird things about podcasting, which is what I was so excited to talk to you about this in particular, is it's, at least to me, it's like, impossible to figure out where you are on the arc of podcasting. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Like, where are we? Are we on the upswing? Are we on the downswing? Are we we just had a bubble. I know that much.
Yeah, I think we're at the plateau.
Yeah.
The second that famous people started doing podcasts, the landscape changed. I think Jason Bateman and Will Arnett and Sean Hayes are all really funny dudes.
Yeah.
But why are they doing it? Like, I know why they're doing it. They make money.
Yeah.
But you're movie stars.
Yeah.
Go make your movies.
Yeah.
I was the first podcast Conan ever did.
Really?
He would bust my balls every day. He'd go, "You doing your little radio show today? Oh, you doing your fake radio?"
Yeah.
And I would be like, "Yeah, I did record today. When do you want to come back?" "Oh, I'll do it Thursday." Like he would come back on, and he did it a number of times. But then it's so funny that he would make fun of me doing it.
Yeah.
And now he's got one of the biggest podcasts.
Yes.
To your boy, he's great at it.
Obviously, he already had an audience. And he was also really good at it. And they were very smart to, I mean, at the beginning, I think it was Sono was definitely going to be like a co-host, but Matt Gorley was just going to be like a producer.
That's it.
But you can't put Matt Gorley at a table across from Conan and not have Conan comment on Matt Gorley.
I'm as guilty of that on my show too. If somebody's walking down the street, I'm going to talk to them.
Yeah.
And Conan's the same way. You can't have a guy sit there and just, doing the knobs without Conan talking about him.
Yeah.
Because that's, you have to.
Yeah.
The guardrails of TV were off.
Yeah.
And you get to see Conan unleashed, which is...
Get to hear him cuss. That's fun.
Again, I'm very grateful that he came into my life, and he's amazingly talented. And I just wish that he would get out of my lane of podcasting. Go do your television show.
Just, take a week off and do the Oscars and then come back to... Yeah, it always amazes me. Like, and this was a fun thing, too. Like, when the whole show would travel... Because we do like a week of shows in New York, week of shows in Chicago. We did that for a while. But that was always very cool to me because that's when I would get to know like other people. Like I get to know you more or because everybody was just kind of, instead of being in the office where everybody had
in one big room.
Separate. It was like a bullpen style because we'd just be in the basement of whatever the theater was or whatever.
Yeah.
That was when I could sort of fully appreciate kind of what everybody did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do.
Let's say like it's like a talent person or whatever. And you see like, Paula Davis and all those people operate and you're like, oh, that's
what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
There's some pressure on these people,
Yeah.
So I always really loved that. And then also just like the pride of kind of like taking the show and putting it up and, being like 2 days out and being like, are we really going to be putting on a show in 2 days? Because this is a fucking mess.
In this beautiful theater.
Yeah. But then everybody, you harness that mechanism and then it's like, yep, here's the show or whatever, like.
And in my case, being the first, when I was, would do the warm-up, I would be the first person on the stage in front of that audience. And just to walk out at the Beacon in New York or at the Chicago Theater in Chicago and walk out to 5,000 people.
Oh my God.
Rabid people.
Yeah.
They've waited in line, for hours to get in there.
Yeah.
So hey, everybody, welcome to Conan. Just the energy of just like blow your hair back like
an eruption.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those shows were amazing.
Yeah.
Those live shows.
Yeah. That was some of my favorite.
Yeah.
So I remember one of my favorite moments was in Chicago. McCann was like, hey, Becton, are you doing anything tomorrow morning around 6?
6 a.m.
I was like, not that I know of. And he's like, do you mind running a camera on this thing we're doing? We're jumping all these different like Chicago, like different things that it was like Mrs. O'Leary's cow,
right.
Obese Packers fan, Mr. T, and they would jump it over the State
river,
Street
right?
Bridge. Yeah. And he's like, do you mind running one of the cameras? And I was like, sure. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And so I get there and I'm assigned to like a police boat with a camera on the Chicago River under the State Street Bridge.
Yeah.
And then another one of my favorite people, Eric Allard. He was a special effects guy.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes,
like everybody called him the dude because he looked like the Big Lebowski basically or whatever, or Jeff Bridges. And he had this rig where he would drive a truck. It was like a pulley system. And he would drive a truck, like just peel out basically. And then that would pull the stuff and catapult it over the bridge. I was like, this is insane. I was like, have you done this before? And he's like, oh, yeah. I was like, really? How many times? And he goes like, 50.
What?
I was like, okay.
Why? Why would you have done that twice? That's crazy.
But I remember just being on that police boat and like looking at that Wilco album cover building or whatever.
Yeah.
And just being like, this is an interesting gig.
Right. It was a great time, certainly. Yeah. I miss the people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't necessarily miss the gig.
Mm-hmm.
Although maybe I do. My ego needs to be scratched and be funny in front of people. But when I left the show to go do my Science Channel show and whatever else I ended up doing, I missed coming into the office and seeing you guys down in your little area with you and Ruthie and the others, and then the writers people, and then Andy and his little nook and Conan.
Yeah.
Like I missed that. I missed all these brilliantly funny and talented people under one roof.
And the off-air stuff is like usually 3 times funnier than the on-air stuff or whatever, just because there's no filter.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, it was a great time of my life, and I was very lucky to have met you because of it.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this.
My honor.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jimmy Pardo, anything you want to tell people about?
Listen to my podcast.
Never Not Funny.
That's it.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jimmy Pardo. I love that Bob Odenkirk story. I've heard other comedians talk about how supportive Odenkirk has been over the years. I guess Tim and Eric is probably the most well-known example of that. And I really love talking to Pardo about the old Conan days. That was such an amazing collection of people. And his story about a broken-armed Mike Sweeney trying to stay upright on a beanbag chair during a job interview is a perfect snapshot of the controlled chaos that was that show. It was just great having Pardo here in the studio. Life and Comedy is recorded at Jet Road Studios. Please rate and review the show on places like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on Instagram. Amber and I also started making a podcast called Jet Road Studios Presents, which is all pilots made in collaboration with some very talented friends. We've made 8 of those pilots so far, and have a bunch more in the pipeline. You can find Jet Road Studios Presents wherever you get your podcast, and please follow Jet Road Studios on Instagram and YouTube, and check out jetroadstudios.com to sign up for the mailing list. Thanks for listening.